The first thing we're going to look at is stretch factors. This is what determines how much or how little the crochet will stretch or give in size. And when we start crocheting something, it might not look like it's going to stretch, but when you start to pull it, you can see that it can stretch quite a lot. If you don't use these steps, you can also just make a foundation chain or make your first row and then stretch it and then see how much that measures, and that will give you an idea of how much it's going to stretch. I usually just subtract from my measurements and then make sure that my first row or round or whatever matches the measurements. So we're going to talk about minimum and maximum stretch factors. So the more your design has of minimum stretch factors, the less you have to subtract from your measurements, and the more maximum stretch factors your design has, the more you can subtract from the measurements. So these are some of the factors. There might be more, but these are the ones that I usually work with. So first of all, the stitches. Are you using small, tight, or textured stitches like these ones? Well then, if you're using small, tight stitches, then you can subtract less from your measurements. If you're using bigger or looser stitches, like double crochet, then it's going to stretch more. Then we have the design. So if it's a closed design like one of these, just a regular top, a sort of tube top, no open back, nothing tied on the back, this is going to stretch less. You tighten and you pull the fabric, you pull it to fit tightly. So you're going to pull the stitches and that will make it stretch more. And then if you're using a small hook, it's gonna stretch less. So a bigger hook is gonna give more stretch. Using strings / elastic. So if you use string or elastic, it might stretch more, but the elastic or the string will sort of hold the fabric together and not make that a big deal. Then we have the materials. So usually wool or acrylic or polyester will stretch less than cotton, in my experience. It always stretches a little bit with wool, but usually it also shrinks a lot back in size when you wash it. So generally cotton stretches more, and when you wash it, it might shrink a little bit back in size, but it won't come completely back to size. Wool sometimes, if you make something that's too big, you can wash it and it will shrink. Yeah, and then we have lastly the design style. So if you're making like a loose sweater, you might even not have to subtract anything, because if you want it to fit loosely, then you can just use your measurements and then it will stretch a little bit and become a little bit bigger. Whereas a tight fitted design, like for instance this top, I want this to fit tightly, so I can subtract a lot and it will continue to fit tightly. If I don't subtract enough, it's gonna be a little bit too loose. So 5 to 10 centimeters for the minimum stretch factors and about 15 to 25 centimeters for maximum stretch factors. So if you have all of these, you can tick off all of these, you might be able to subtract 25 centimeters, but it depends a lot. And actually, one of the most important factors that I haven't written is crochet tension. So meaning how tight or how loose you hold the yarn and hook, how tightly you crochet or how loosely you crochet. And normally I can always subtract at least 10 centimeters because my tension is quite loose. And these measurements are from the overall measurement. So if you take your bust measurement, then you subtract from that, from the entire measurement. And the design can also stretch in length. It's not as much, but things like some of these factors will impact how much it stretches vertically. Normally, if I have all these factors, I will subtract at least 2 centimeters from the length. You don't really need to subtract anything from the length in the minimum stretch factors if you have all of these ticked off. Okay, we're gonna start with the design construction. So let's start with a very simple design, the tube top. And let's look at how we can construct this. So as you can see, we have a tube, we have a front, and we have a back. And there are no increases or decreases, it's just a rectangle with straight angles here and here. We have the tube. And there are many ways you can construct a top like this. Either you can make it separately, so you have your front panel and you have a back panel, so you have 2 of these, and then you put them together on the sides, and then you get a tube. So here this is connected on both sides. The next kind of construction is to take 2 of these and make one long piece. So a rectangle that's the same height but double the width of this one. And when you fold that in half and connect it just on one side, you get a tube. My favorite one is to start with the tube. So crochet in a round from the beginning. And this is because from my first round, I can make sure that this matches my measurements. And depending on how many minimum or maximum stretch factors I have, I can subtract 5 to 25 centimeters. Using a construction like this will enable you to try on the design as you go. And if you want to make any adjustments, like maybe making decreases or increases, you can do that as you go. This one is also good because if you start your row here, you can start with the length that you want the top to have. And then you crochet back and forth in rows. And as you go, you can fold this around your body and then make sure that it measures. And then you can stop when it measures around your body. With this one, it's a little bit more tricky because you have to know how much to subtract from your measurements from the beginning. You make 2 of these panels, and when you put them together, you have to make sure that this matches your body. Let's use our knowledge with these constructions to make a sweater. So we have a sweater here, a rectangle, which is the body, and this would be a tube because we need 2 panels. We need a front and a back. And then we need some sleeves. This is also 2 panels. Okay, so either you can make all of this individually, so you can make a rectangle, then make 2 of these for the front and the back. Then you can make the sleeve, so you can make the sleeve length and then make double the width of the sleeve and then fold it on the long side and put it together on the side, and that will give you a sleeve. So here we would only connect it on the side to make room for the sleeves here on the side, and only connect it over the shoulders So you only connect the panel over some of the sides, not the entire side. So here we have 2 individual panels put together. So here we've made double the width of the sleeve and then fold it. But we could also make 2 of these and then put them together on both sides, and that would give us a tube. My favorite way to make a sweater like this is to start with the tube. So all of this. So I crochet in a round, and then you have the belly of the sweater. So from the edge of the sweater to your armhole, and then I crochet out from the tube. So I make rows out from half of the tube until I have the front panel and the back panel. And then I connect these 2 with each other over the shoulder. So I sew or crochet these together. So we fold them together, and that will give us this. And then I like to just crochet around here, crochet in the opening. And that way I can try on the sleeve as I go. If I want to make decreases or increases, it's easier to tell how it's gonna look when I do it directly out from the sweater. So it's actually really simple to make a sweater. This one is just very, very basic without any decreases or increases. Our next step is to look at shape, angles, and decrease and increase. So when we look at the design, we have to look at what I call the grid. So it is just these horizontal and vertical straight angles. And when we put our design into this grid, it shows us where and how much to increase or decrease. So you can use it as an overall grid, or you can use it on specific areas of the design. Like you can use it in this area to determine how much and where to decrease on the top. So if your design goes like this, there is a design here, then you can see that this angle here goes out from the grid. This is just a slight angle. If it was like this, it would mean that you had to decrease a lot. An angle like this means it's less decreasing. And the same goes if you're crocheting in this direction. So you were starting here. This would mean that you had to do a little bit of increasing. If the line was out here, it would be much more. I want a skirt that looks something like this. And I put the grid into this design. So I find the shortest width, and then I bring the line straight down like this. As you can see, the design goes out from the beginning of these points. So the skirt goes out on both sides. So what I can tell from this grid is that from the beginning of the skirt, it goes out on both sides. If this was my first row, then I would increase on both sides. If this was my first row, I would decrease on both sides. And to determine how much and how often to increase and decrease, we need 3 measurements. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This is just a guide to sort of know how much and how often to increase or decrease. So let's say you were making a tube. You were crocheting in a round, and instead of just going straight down, just going around with no increases and decreases, you were gonna go out in both sides. Okay? So what we need here is our first measurement, the shortest measurement, the length of the skirt from the beginning to the edge, and how wide we want the skirt to be on the last round. So let's say that my first round is 70 centimeters, and I want the length to be, let's say, 50 centimeters, and I want this widest part of the skirt in circumference to be 120 centimeters. So I have to go from 70 to 120 over 50 centimeters. So I take 120, subtract with 70, that's 50, 50, and divide it with 50. That's 1. So I add 1 centimeter in circumference, so around, per 1 centimeter in length. So for each centimeter that I go down the skirt, I add 1 centimeter in circumference. And then you have to measure on your first round how much 1 centimeter is in circumference and how much 1 centimeter is in length. So if 1 centimeter equals, let's say, 2 stitches, and 1 centimeter in length equals 1 row, then it's 2 divided with 1, which is 2. So I add 2 stitches for each round that I make, all the way down. And these measurements that you take, it might be a little bit off, it might be a little bit too big. Maybe you will end up with 55 centimeters in length or 40 centimeters in length, or maybe your width will be 123 centimeters instead. But it's just to give you a little bit of an idea of how this angle and how this grid works.